I'd like to start off by taking 10 seconds very briefly and thanking everyone for the amazing amount of support I got on the last video. I loved all the questions and kind words I got, and I do appreciate it. Without further delay, on to the video for the day. The mycologist is kind of an enigma, don't you think? He comes in seemingly out of nowhere, does some experiments, discovers a fragment of the old data, and then leaves never to be seen again. When we talk about the mycologist though, I think we've got to take our magnifying glass and look at the bigger picture, and really think about what the mycologists say and do. Let's look at what we know about the mycologists from the mycologists. On the mycologist's first introduction, we learn a few things right off the bat. Firstly, the mycologist has two heads and two similar but different personalities. Secondly, the mycologist is not from around here and are from elsewhere. Do you think elsewhere means somewhere else in Inscryption? Or does elsewhere maybe mean somewhere from outside of Inscryption? The final thing we learned from meeting the mycologist is that they can take two of our cards that are the same and combine them into one more powerful card. When we next see the mycologists in Act 2, they're still performing experiments on cards combining two into one for the player, provided the player has the cards required. It's clear that the larger head is much meeker and more polite, while the smaller head is more blunt and abrasive. At 3 combinations, they reveal that they're coming closer to gaining an understanding of something from their experiments, and at 4 experiments they mentioned that combining those cards revealed a clue to them about the Carnoffel code. We're then given a key we'll use to encounter them again in Act 3. The last time we see the mycologists is in Act 3 when they hack Poe in order to complete their final experiment. They combine cards and are able to create, mimic, or reveal a fragment of the old data. Following this, Poe regains control of himself, and we never see the mycologists in Inscryption ever again. In an attempt to answer who the mycologists are and what their motivations are, let's take a step back. Take a step back to the 6 Pint Inn. Jeremiah is a character who was created as part of a game called Root Beer Tender as an NPC who mopped floors. The main character of Root Beer Tender, Root Beer Reggie, was slated to have his game and all the contents of it deleted, but is able to escape along with Jeremiah and construct the 6 Pint Inn. Reggie then starts his plan of vengeance and uses Jeremiah, who has an unswerving loyalty to him, to manipulate the other main characters of the Hex into coming to the 6 Pint Inn and performing the ritual to allow them to escape to the real world and kill their creator who wanted to delete them. Jeremiah and Reggie's plan succeeds completely, and Reggie chokes and kills Lionel and escapes into the real world, and that's presumably the last time we see or hear from Jeremiah or Reginald. Well, I personally think that's not the case. I think Jeremiah and Reginald have inhabited Lionel's body as a vessel and are actually the mycologists we encounter in Inscryption. Firstly, Lionel and the mycologists look extremely similar. They all have rounded glasses along with a facial structure that almost looks like a mirror. Secondly, Jeremiah has a relation to mushrooms and in fact has mushrooms growing out of his head. Who else has a relation to mushrooms and a mushroom growing out of their head? Finally, when the mycologist speaks, he clearly concedes to the little mushroom man growing on the side of his head. He listens loyally to that little growth on his head, much in the same way that Jeremiah listens to Reginald. If we consider the mycologists to be Reginald and Jeremiah, what questions and conclusions can we draw? Firstly, we may be able to answer the question of why the mycologists are able to take control of Poe in the first place. During the events leading up to the death of Lionel, we learn that Jeremiah is able to warp the perception of the player so that they think they're playing a video game instead of assaulting GameWorks headquarters and murdering innocent NPCs. Also during this same mission, we learn that Jeremiah has been using his mind control serum to control NPCs, and that GameWorks was doing an investigation into the use of that mind control serum. We actually get to experience this mind control serum as one of its victims, Rust, in Wasteworld and later at the 6 Pint Inn. It's clear that some kind of code is being injected into a character when they're under the control of this mind control serum. Jeremiah uses this mind control serum on Rust in order to navigate him to the inn and use him to open the Hex into the real world. We may then then be able to infer that they use this same mind control serum to control Poe, so they may experiment and glean wisdom and clues related to the old data. Another question we may be able to ask is, what are the mycologists' motivations and interests in acquiring the old data? The tiny mushroom head is the dominant personality of the mycologist and has no problem talking about the Carnoffel code, or the old data, but the big passive head has an interest in not subjecting humans to that knowledge, however. They could be interested in experimenting on the old data to glean its wisdoms and hide it away forever, but I think it's much more likely they're interested in learning about it in an attempt to use it. Just imagine how powerful they'd be having two otherworldly artifacts, the Hex combined with the old data. If Reginald is able to use his arm to choke Lionel, wouldn't that imply that his whole body could just exit the computer and participate in the events mentioned in this video? It's implied, I think, that digital characters might be able to leave the digital world for some time and maintain their normal bodies, but since Sato still has to use a vessel like Amanda, I think this also implies that Reginald and Jeremiah would have to use a vessel as well. How are the mycologists, if they are Jeremiah and Reginald, able to inhabit the inscription disk if it was buried years before the events of the Hex? In the Mullinverse, characters are oftentimes able to transcend the limits set upon them by their creators. Consider, for example, the fact that Jeremiah can control people like we control video game characters, or the fact that Sato can manipulate the digital world which she resides in. Take this and also apply the fact that we can see a few other GameWorks characters in Inscryption, and we may be able to understand that NPCs, when they're connected to a computer, or perhaps to the internet, are able to hop between games. I do concede, however, that if it was this simple, why wouldn't Magnificus or Leshy hop over to another game as they were being deleted? It's an interesting hole in the argument, and I hope it sparks discussion about this enigmatic character. And those are my thoughts on what is up with the mycologist. I hope you enjoyed. This has been another theory video. Thank you for watching, and good luck out there, card gamers.